Welcome back to the Two Comma Club podcast. Today I'm joined by Rob and Alex, one of the co-founders of GoHighLevel, and I'm really excited about this episode. I've learned a ton about GoHighLevel in the past few years after previously coming from the ClickFunnels world, and so what I'm interested in is understanding, Robin, in your own words, what would you say GoHighLevel is, and who is it relevant for?
Yeah, so we have a platform. It's a full CRM, really marketing operating system. So we started out really working with different products, and it was what happens after you collect the lead. And for many, they weren't doing any follow up, or it was manual, and you had to duct tape lots of different pieces of software. So that's where we started, and then from there, we basically looked at it as a full funnel and starting building products that top of funnel. So think of advertising. So we have an ad manager platform, we have a landing page builder, survey builders, all those sort of things to collect the leads. Then once you capture the leads, you need to nurture them. So this is where we have texting, emailing capabilities. You can send out email newsletters, really all those sorts of items there. And then, from a close perspective, we have proposals, we have a lot of the business operation tools. And, so really for us, as we start moving, we're 7 years into the business. Now it's starting to build even more products. And really for us, it's how do we own really the full business from an operating system and technology perspective and have it all encapsulated into one place because it all talks to each other.
That's really cool. I think you've identified one of the biggest problems that I see a lot of entrepreneurs run into, especially in today's digital age, which is having, like you said, all those different things duct taped together. And so, help walk me through the process of understanding how it is that you guys came to identify that issue and then make that kind of I would consider it the competitive advantage that you guys have in terms of bringing everything together.
Yeah. So prior to High Level, so there's three co-founders in the company. There's me, Sean Clark, and Varun Varavan. And, on my path prior to High Level, been an entrepreneur, worked for a couple companies as well as started a couple of my businesses. And then right before High Level, I was in IT consulting, got into development, started building websites for different companies, turned that into a marketing agency. Had about, at its peak, about 20 employees, serving about, roughly 200 customers around the world. And at that time, it was this push on how do we serve the businesses better. Either it's passing on leads, just doing normal advertising, lead generation, passing that on to the business, and really the business not knowing what to do with it, as far as communicating or following up. A dentist is always going to be a dentist. They don't really know how to sell their product and services unless if
Right.
it's a warm or hot lead. And so what we did is we pivoted and really got into helping businesses from a consulting perspective on how do you do the follow-up and can we, put systems and processes in place. So at that time we started duct taping, call it 15 different tools where once a lead comes in, you got to send it to a text messaging application, an emailing application, you put it in some sort of dashboard. You then needed, create automations to push out to a different software so that you could do reporting and analyzing things like that. So that's what we were doing in the agency side. And then I had one of my customers reach out to me saying, "Hey, there's these two gentlemen who are trying to launch a different piece of software, and they're asking for access to my login to Facebook and Google and things like that, and I don't have it. Can you talk to them?" And it happened to be my other two co-founders, Sean and Varun. And what they were building was a communication tool, really for reputation management. And got on a call with them, gave them access to things, and then I was like, "Well, hey, while I have you guys, I'd love for you guys to take a look at what I'm doing in the agency, and maybe there's synergies, or just out of curiosity, what would it take to build?" And I've done development in the past, but when you're out of the game for a while, you kind of want to know, like, what do other people think of it, and think that if there's anything there. And I got the weirdest response, which was, "This is interesting. Give us a couple days. We'll call you back." And in my mind at that moment, I just interpreted that, hey, they could be working for Megacorp for all I know. I didn't really do a lot of research on who they were, how big the company was, or anything. And maybe it was like a project manager for all I know. And they were just trying to get me off the call. They weren't really going to help or get back to me.
Yeah.
But to my luck, a couple days later, I got a call from Sean, and Sean was basically saying, "Hey, let's get on a call. We want to show you something." And of course, I get to the office. I was literally driving to the office at the time that he called, and when I got there, I went through my normal, morning routine and didn't call him back. I forgot about it. And he called me back again. And, so at that point, I get on a phone call with them, and they had mocked up kind of the first version of what I was doing in the agency, which is, very close to the first version of High Level. And it was incredible. And so what we did was take that concept and implement it for one of my customers, and immediate success. And I was like, okay, well, there's something here. Let's go try it for a couple more customers. And, just kept working back to back. And then it's like, okay, let's get it for all of my customers. And I just went back to the guy saying, all right, well, let's try to get it out to more agencies, and then from there, we were just picking up the phone. I was calling a lot of relationships that I had built over the time, and one of those actually happened to become a business consultant, who had sold his previous agency, and, he was hosting his first event. He invited us out, and we promoted it at this event, and everybody in the room purchased, which was crazy. We didn't think that that was even possible, nor were we selling. We were just showing them the product. And then from there, 7 years later, we're, about to hit 100,000 customers, all word of mouth, and,
That's amazing.
really, just, we're still doing the same thing that we've been doing since day one.
That sounds like God has, blessed you guys quite a bit, to say the least,
Oh,
in your journey.
100%,
That's
100%.
that's amazing. So I understand how it is that you kinda came to the conclusion of, like, duct taping everything together. Tell me a little bit more about, your origin story and how it is that you got into the world of entrepreneurship. Like, what influences did you have in your life and your environment that ended up making you want to, ultimately go down that road and take on the hard risks of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, even at a young age, I was the kid that was, I remember when I was 7, I, bought some candy bars that I had to, sneak into the house, and, we would it was me and my cousin, and we had, got on a computer and printed out just a quick piece of paper like, "Hey, 7 PM on Thursday, we're doing a bike race, prizes," and we put
That's
it on
awesome.
all the neighbors' houses, and we knew, the kids and stuff, and we had all of our friends show up, and then we it was literally from one end of the street to the end, and, it was a $5 entrance to pay, and everyone, all of our friends paid, and we gave out candy to all the winners, and then gave, like, $20 to the winner there. So doing silly things like that, and then, of course, middle school, I remember I would print out lyrics of songs and sell it for a quarter a page. Like, I was just this random kid, and then it was like, burning CDs, and then getting into, video games, and one of the biggest things for me was, like, building computers, and at that time in high school, building computers was really popular, and then, games, so we were playing a lot of computer games, me and my circle of friends, and one of the things was, for Counter Strike, needed to have an online server. So I somehow figured out how to build a server for all of us. And then when we were playing, I would have other people reach out saying, "Hey, where'd you guys get this server? Can you guys host it for me?" So I ended up turning that into a business. And then, once I graduated high school, getting into college, grew it, decently sized, and ended up selling it. And from there, I've dabbled into other things of like e-com and getting into IT consulting, helping other businesses grow. So that's where I always had a passion for helping businesses. It's just when you work for a megacorp and large companies are trying to sell to them, it's always about budgets and bureaucracy and internal politics. But when you're helping a small business, you're able to see the result and the impact of that solution very quickly, and you're actually able to help people in their local communities. And so that's kind of where, the different paths of my entrepreneurship and then kind of where we landed today for me, it's kind of that perfect convergence there.
I love that. Dude, your backstory, I relate to that on so many levels. It's hilarious. I remember as a kid in high school, I would go and buy soda at the store because personally, I wanted the soda, right? But I found that I didn't have a job and the money to do it. So, like, I would go buy a 2 liter, take cups to school, hand it out in class for like a couple quarters, and then do the same thing. And people were always like, "Yo, dude, that's awesome. Do you have snacks?" And I'm like, "Not yet." So, my first upsell was cereal that I had on there as well. And it
There you
was,
go.
yeah, it was really funny. So good
That's
times.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so in terms of the beginning of high level and everything else, one of the things that I always love to ask is like, how is it that you got in front of people? How are people finding that you existed once you got this concept to market and you started putting it out there? What was your main form of getting discovered? If you want to save time on watching all the episodes, but still get all the gold nuggets that we find from interviewing these 7, 8, and 9 figure entrepreneurs, then you can get all of that inside of the 2 Comma Club newsletter. Just go to 2ccnewsletter.com and subscribe.
Yeah, I mean, when we started high level, the best thing was word of mouth, and it's still that today, right? So we always believe that we had the best product out there, or we're gonna fight to make sure that it's the best product. And for every customer that came on, and we have the same model today that we want to give you that extreme VIP experience at a concierge level to where when you get on a call with me, doesn't matter if it was me, Sean, or Varun when we started, but we're gonna make sure that we get you set up, and then we're just gonna keep checking up on you until you get that first point of success. Now, for everybody, that point of success is a little bit different, but once we saw that we had that, that little smile on your face that we got it working, we would just straight up ask, "Hey, do you know anyone else that would like the software?" And John, you know kind of the ecosystem that we're in. Everyone's in these little groups or these little masterminds and stuff like that. And we would just ask, like, "Hey, can you refer them?" And then we just once you build up confidence, it's like, "Hey, why don't you invite them to the Zoom call?" And then people would do that. And then over time we got better of like, "Hey, let's ask our two people." So John, do you know two people that would like it? And
Right.
worst case, you'd at least get one referral.
Mhm.
And, for some, it was like, "Oh, yeah, I know, 3 or 4 people. Do you mind jumping on into our next mastermind meeting? There's 5 of us there. You can talk about the product." And we would just create this echo chamber everywhere we got. And then we would run into people who would be like, "Look, Robin, I can give you one person, but, I have a big audience. I happen to have this big Facebook group, or I know, a lot of other people. Do you have some sort of referral, or can we do some partnership or something like that?" And that was actually the genesis of creating an affiliate program. And so that's where, we kind of compounded what we had, but it's still built on word of mouth. Now it's just, we just, give a referral commission along the way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about having affiliates in that space, being able to refer people and having aligned interests in it, especially when we talk about a software when it comes to like monthly recurring revenue. I know most entrepreneurs, their biggest desire is to be in a place where they have the time to do the things that they actually want to do with who they want to do it and how they want to do it. And to me, the key metric for enabling that is recurring revenue. If you can have more recurring revenue than you have monthly expenses, you're in that sweet spot. So
100%.
that is one of the things that, from afar, I've noticed is one of the driving factors behind a lot of people coming to the high level platform. You guys have created not only the affiliate side of things, but also the white label. And so I'm curious to know how it is that you guys came to that conclusion and kind of the backstory behind that.
Yeah. So, when you talk about recurring revenue, many agencies were struggling because they were going out to different businesses. They were offering professional services, and either you had to get success with that customer or you go down to 0. So while you think you have the potential of recurring revenue, it's not a passive recurring revenue. It's a very active model there. And so what we wanted to do was saying, "Hey, well, if you kind of break down what you've done previously, you would tell your client to go sign up to HubSpot or Active Campaign or something like that. And then you would spend a lot of time in doing the implementation and setting it up on that business." And not only is there a share a wallet issue, mostly with small businesses, there's only so much time before they're just like, "Oh my gosh, this is just taking forever. What's going on?" And once you get, to that 2-month mark, 3-month mark, the customer's gonna be like, "Dude, John, thank you, but I can't afford you anymore." And so they end up canceling your services. So you don't have that recurring revenue anymore. But at the end of the day, the people that win was always the HubSpots of the world, the active campaigns, all those different products because they kept the recurring revenue. The business will keep it because they're like, give us a couple of months and then we'll hire somebody else, or maybe we'll bring John back to do it. So then what we decided at that point was like, look, to help create a more passive recurring revenue, let's go back to our customers saying, take our product, you can now white label it, put your brand on it. So now there is a sense of IP and ownership into it. And there truly is IP and ownership because it's not so much about the product in itself. Anybody can go to Home Depot and buy a hammer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a home builder, right? Like you can get all the tools in the world,
100%.
but you got to have a blueprint and you got to have some skills to put it all together. And that is the magic sauce in so many ways. And what we want to do was take that magic sauce and put your name in headlights. So that's why we white labeled it. And now as an agency or any other business who wasn't doing recurring revenue, it's you could still offer the same services, but now you have a separate line item, which allows you to sell the subscription that, before us, you would have had to have them pay somewhere else. But now you get to have 100% of that revenue. And, even when the coaches and consultants and creators world is very similar, they're selling a coaching product or, a course or something. But a lot of that course was how to implement kind of a business stack. And they were telling, go sign up here, go sign up there, so the retention rates were really low. It was very complicated, very, just messy. And so now it's just offer them high level and it's ready to go. Now you can get to the IP, like the value players of what you're providing as a coach, as a consultant as well.
Definitely. I couldn't agree anymore. And I think there's a ton of value in there, giving people access to the tool to basically put their own brand on it, as you said. It enables people to first and foremost, be successful with the additional line items like you talk about. And then more specifically, the thing that stands out to me is the lower fulfillment side of things.
Mhm.
Most of the big businesses that I see that are out there, they tend to have products that are relatively lower fulfillment, which helps them to scale easier. And as you're mentioning, especially with agencies, they're so high fulfillment. So with all that being said, like what were you guys focusing on in terms of your ideal target audience and demographic and helping them kind of navigate that fulfillment side of things?
Yeah, so there's two different types of customer avatars that we look for. One is anyone who wants to resell and create a new line item into their business. We always think about, time to value. Your time is the biggest cost driver in anyone's business, right? When you think of gross margin, as a coach, a consultant, even an agency, they spend a lot of time in the delivery and what you just mentioned there. And yet you have to offer it at a reasonable cost, which actually drives down the value of your time in many ways, right? And so for us, it was like, how do we create that new line item for them? And in the worst case, if the customer drops professional services, you still get some revenue. And you can now start expanding on top of it. So offering them other services and products that don't require a lot of time. So now you end up turning into a very high profit, high margin business. Now, the second avatar that we look for and try to understand is for the people that buy high level, who are they serving? And how do we make it easy for them? Because we have to make sure that they are successful so that our direct customer is successful. So it's kind of this, weird dimensionality that we deal in. But at the end of the day, even for that customer, let's say if it's a dentist or a mechanic who's coming in, that's one of your customers. They need to understand how to use the software and buy back time within their business, right? This is why we're doing stuff where it's automations. We got to make sure that that's easy, leveraging AI, putting tools and systems that businesses never had to deal with or understand. We have to not only offer it to them, but make it easy for them to leverage as well. So when we think about avatars, it's kind of going in those two different approaches.
I like that a lot. A lot of people that I speak with on the podcast, they talk about their one avatar, but I think that you've opened up the can of worms that I see that I don't know how many people see. It's the idea that like there's a downstream effect, right? It's like you might help one person, but when helping that one person, there's now another effect on the people that they're helping. And if you can understand that, then you have the opportunity to create more value for both people. And I think that's something you're really well focused on, and I applaud you for that. Um,
Thank
the
you.
next thing I want to ask is with those avatars and everything, and the word of mouth of getting discovered. How is it that you're nurturing relationships with those individuals and showing them the value that you have to offer to them?
Yeah, I mean, we are one of the values that we have internally in the company is having a bias to action. Now, that's represented in many different ways. When you see someone having a problem, you need to jump on it and give that face to face value. So for us, we're a Zoom first company. I want to see your face. I want to see your reaction. I want you to feel my emotion and my empathy in trying to help you solve the problem, right? And when you cascade that across a whole organization, you win a lot of value and strengthen the relationship with every customer. It's no longer you're a number. It's there's a name to a face on both sides, and you can actually see us really trying to get to the solution and not just trying to that's just how it works, or, that's a you problem, not a me problem. So that's one of the biggest things. And then, it's also important for us to be within our community. So, we have a very active Facebook group. We do a lot of live events. Before the call, you were asking how one of our conferences went. We did a small one here in Dallas, and Sean and I are there the whole time, and we're walking around. We're sitting at our customers' tables. We're not just on stage and disappearing. We're actually there with our customers, and we do about I think we're on pace to doing well over 100 events this year. And one of the most important
That's
things
wild.
is, how can we be close to our community? Because I want to hear the challenges that you're dealing with. I want to hear about where you're going with your company. Because then I could start thinking of what are other tools that you'll need or don't even realize that you need. Let's start building those. And or if we're having, issues that we can solve, let's talk about that. And, so for us, it's how do we not only create a community, nurture the community, but be a part of the community as well.
I love that. That's wildly impressive. That idea of 100 events. I gotta ask, like, what are some of those that you're pulling together? Is there a variety of virtual and in person, or is it predominantly one or the other? And what are they?
Yeah, yeah. So we do typically, we host about 4 in-person events here in Dallas, 1 large one, which we call our summit, but and 3 smaller, events, roughly about 100 to 150. It's very, close-knit. You get to meet and talk to everyone. Now we're trying to expand those, internationally as well. So we do, I think this year we're trying to do 8 in total, 4 in Dallas, and then, 4 internationally. And then, we do weekly webinar events, and so, we're doing a ton of those. But when I talk about 100 events, we're talking about actually traveling and being a part of the community. And so, there's a lot of other people, a lot of other communities, a lot of other, um, you know, industry events that we're trying to be a part of. Some or many of them we get invited to. Some, we're asking, how can we partner together? How can we support you and things like that. So really, it's just continuing to just be everywhere and supporting where we can.
That's awesome. I love that. It's not every day that there's business owners that are willing to be that involved in the communities that they serve. I find that especially in the coaching space and things of that nature, there are some individuals who are willing to go to that extent, but then there are others that are giving everyone a bad name in that rep. And seeing how successful you guys are and yet still being that involved, that's amazing. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it is tough for, different business models. I mean, a lot of it is trying to develop your personal brand and things like that. So people put a lot of effort there, and you have to sometimes, in supporting your personal brand, you have to make some, you know, selfish decisions. Not in a negative way, but unfortunately, that's just the truth of the matter. And for us, when we started the company, it was always, we really don't have any interest being public figures at that top level. We're good with stepping behind the scenes. So how do we build a company that we can just, keep doing what we do and what we enjoy? Let other people put their brands out there because their brands are way stronger than us. Let them put their names on the software. Let them, promote it as much as they want. And then from there, it's how do we just support the community? Because rising tides lift all boats, right? So that's the way that we designed our business and how we made it successful for us.
I love that. So diving more into kind of the overall strategy, you have the way that you're getting discovered is word of mouth and referrals, adding value to the community, having conversations face to face with them to nurture those relationships. But in terms of like capturing people's information and getting them to be a part of the ecosystem that you guys have going on, talk about either your funnels or tactics or anything related to those sales and marketing strategies.
Yeah, so, once someone comes into our funnel, the first thing that we do is we love getting people into a 14-day trial. Immediately when they, come into the trial, we're doing a couple of different things. One, of course, we're emailing and trying to get a hold of you, but one of the biggest value points that we have is having our live Zoom rooms. So we have teams that are staffed 24/7, well over 200 people, and the idea is that as soon as you come into our software, we want you to come into the Zoom room, talk to us, get a thorough demo, and make sure that's the right product for you. And if it is, that's great. What we then want to do is take you to our implementation team, which is our customer success team. and very similar, staff that up with about 200, 250 people 24/7. And so that when you are ready to get started, there's a team right there that follows a set procedure, and they're going to walk you through step by step by step. Now, a lot of people think that you're supposed to try doing it like a one to many concept, but at the end of the day, to get the most successes, how do we do it in a way where we can give you a one to one experience? And that's kind of, where I mentioned, like, even when we started, it was always this high value, high concierge feeling that you can't get anywhere else. How do we create that in the software world and do it at scale? And so that's what we've done there.
That's very interesting. I like the conversation around the one to many versus the one to one. I've been going to church a lot recently, and the pastor's message has been around the conversation of doing it one at a time, right? Like that is his whole theme right now. And I found that a lot of the value that we can provide in the community and stuff can be done digitally, it can be done in person and all those things, but they all have different levels of effect on people.
Yeah.
And so that FaceTime, that one-on-one, I I think there's a lot to be said about how much value you can add to cater to specifically that one person's problems. So how did you guys end up coming to the conclusion that you wanted to work with people one-on-one versus doing like one to many?
My philosophy has always been when something's working, just put more gasoline on it. And I think as entrepreneurs, many people struggle with, like, once you get something working, let's it's like you stack up a whole bunch of Jenga blocks and you're like, "Okay, I got it perfect. Boom, let's knock it off and let's try to build another version of it." Right? Because you wanna
Yeah.
build something even bigger. And in reality, it's like, how do you take something that's working in an unscalable manner and just make that more efficient and better so that you can make it scalable? And I think people just get too far extreme into it. So for me, it's what is the outcome that we want? And if the best outcome is in that one-to-one experience, okay, if we're gonna scale it up and make it better, I wanna make that scaling process, make sure that we can get to at least a 90 to 95% same outcome that we had in this very unscalable method. And I think that's the piece that entrepreneurs forget. They build something they like it, and they see some forms of success, but they're not measuring that success when they go to the next scalable manner. They're only focused on the building. So when you build that new thing, yes, you're able to quote unquote serve more people, but you're not paying attention to the volume of success. And so what's always interesting when you compare our what we're doing and then like coaches and consultants, they always talk about, we sell a lot, but only 1 to 5% actually follow through with it. I think if you kind of look at the business model for some of those that say that, it's truly because they got away from when they were small. You could have these personal interactions, and they never looked at, like, okay, when I scaled it up, how do I still create that same version or that same effect? Because it shouldn't be 1 to 5, and you shouldn't be fighting for the 1 to 5. You should be figuring out how to get that to an even greater number.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I think that there's a lot to be said about how that affects, how do I put this? The business metric that I'm looking at is retention rates, and I'm assuming that it increases the retention rates exceedingly high. But more specifically, when you look at why that is the case, it's because you're adding those touch points to actually genuinely help those people, which is phenomenal. Because then they have the downstream effect of everyone they're helping and etc. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So let's see here. Back to your story. I know that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that we have either listening to the podcast or have been on here, we've all struggled with different moments of adversity in our entrepreneurial journeys, and through faith, a lot of us have conquered that and things of that nature. So, I'm curious to know, like, what were some of those moments that were pretty hard, and how did you guys navigate through them?
Yeah, I think when we've always had down points in the business, it's always one, having 2 other partners has been a blessing in disguise just from that perspective of when, the lows are the lows, because there's usually one person that's like, "Guys, it's okay." Right? Like, we have another solution, or I've been thinking about this. And, when people talk about our company, they try to figure out who we are and what our roles are and, how do we all play. But, when you have 3 people, no one has to be put into a specific box, right? I think everyone has their moments of genius, and everyone has their moments of, like, I feel like building, or I wanna run this down, right? And so, in those low points, it's usually there's one person who wants to step up to be that visionary, It's like, "Guys, it's okay. I got this idea." And so, while 2 are down, the other person can kinda lift the other 2 up. And so, every time that we've had stumbling blocks in growing the business, everyone has been, kinda very supportive and trying to help each other there. So to be honest, that's been our secret sauce and how we've grown and conquered out of it.
I love that. Um, so as you've gone through the journey of building up high level and everything, I know that there's different levels to the game, right? And if you're able to, if you could disclose, are you currently at the 9-figure mark? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, we're well over, 9 figures annually. I think our valuation is, a little over 1 point, you know, it's up there,
Yeah.
it's growing, but, I think the more important number that we'd like to talk about is how much money that we're making our customers, and so
Hmm.
one of the crazy numbers that we were looking at is we're, making about, close to 300, I think 50 to $400 million annually, into our customers' pockets.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and that's just on like one small aspect of our business that we're helping agencies make. There's a larger number. I think in total we've made collectively like $3.5 billion that our customers have made. We haven't seen it. And one of our visions is, or our mission is, we want to be a $10 billion company where $9 billion is made annually for for our customers, and then because we're doing such a good job, we'll become a $1 billion annually run rate company. And so we're definitely on that path, and I'm hoping to get there in the next 2 to 3 years actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so you're in a unique position to be able to answer this question, and this is what I want to ask. So ultimately, we've had a lot of people who have come and they've hit 7 figures, and we've seen some of the patterns as to how it is that people can get to that level. And then to me, from what I've understood, is getting from 7 to 8. It's ultimately about hiring more people on the team to be able to scale things of that nature. But how do you go from 8 figures to 9 figures, kind of in your own words? Like, what are those major contributors to that growth?
For us, it's always been how do you do what you've always done, and how do you put more gasoline on it? And so for me, I mean, the biggest thing going from 8 figures to 9 figures is, how do we kind of package up our whole business and really go into other markets or other territories that we haven't been in, and just executing against that same playbook. Now, I think the biggest struggle going from, 7 to 8 figures, you said it's like getting the right people and things like that. But when you get the right people, um, there's a push pull in how do you ramp up quickly? Do you then spend time in documentation, creating the SOPs and packaging it up, or do you just coach people and people learn by fire? And, for us at 7 figures, it was learning by fire. At 8 figures, it's kind of packaging it up and putting SOPs and processes in place. And then at 9 figures, it's, how do you execute, and, just continuing to put more gasoline on it.
Nice. I like that. So it sounds like it's less about being more creative and more about continuing to make sure that everything runs smoothly and continuing the process of what's already working, if I
Yeah.
understand
I mean, if
correctly.
you look at the biggest businesses in the world, do you consider Walmart being creative? I mean, they're such a well-known brand and all that, but what they do is what they're still doing today. They're opening up more locations. It's the same playbook. They're hiring X amount of staff. They know the hours and things like that. It's not they're gonna create, they're gonna stop that whole business model and now start something new. It's 80%, 90% of our time is just doing what we've done, just opening up in more markets.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot to be said around this particular topic because Alex Ramosi says it in one of his videos. I don't remember exactly which one, but he always talks about the girl in the red dress, right? And it's whatever that new shiny opportunity is and wanting to jump in there and do that. But really, like, hitting that next level of success the way you've said it is less about like trying to find that new opportunity and more about being disciplined and doing the same thing every day that's already working to grow to that level, which is funny because it sounds so straightforward, but with the amount of people that I talk to, it seems like it goes right over everyone's head. What do you think kind of contributes to people wanting to shift gears once they've hit a certain level of success?
I think, it's hard when you get into the comparison game. When you start comparing what you've done against other people's success, you feel like you have to pivot and change and just to keep up with the Joneses. But, you know, if you kind of keep your blinders on and just continue doing what you're doing and, you know, feel confident in what you're doing, then it's just more about doing more of the same thing. And it does get boring and it does get repetitive because you're not necessarily innovating anymore to a certain level in the creation of the business. Maybe your product and services, you know, that's your R&D and you could always be innovative there. But in creating the business, the innovation starts slowing down because it's more about operationalizing it and scaling it from there and adding sales and marketing and pushing it out to new markets. But when you think about your business, R&D is typically 0 to 10%. 80% of your time is in the operations. And so entrepreneurs feel like that is their business where they need to be creative all the time on. And I think that's where people get it wrong because it's like, well, I don't see any more creativity. I've gotten to a level of success. Now let me kind of look around. What are other people doing? You know, you go to these events and these masterminds and you start comparing yourself to everyone and you feel like you've been doing it wrong the whole time. So, and instead of just saying, okay, I learned some cool things, but let me just get back to what I'm doing and, you know, take it off from there.
I love that. I think that again, that is one of the most underrated concepts out there right now is just sticking to the thing that's already working and just continuing to drill down on it.
Yeah,
I can't express that enough, especially from the area of people that I come from. So, for anybody who's listening, keep your blinders on and keep going. Like,
exactly.
sounds like the takeaway. Okay, so then in terms of high level and all of the stuff that you guys are doing behind the scenes right now, what are kind of the goals that you guys have in 2025, and what are the steps you're taking to reach those goals?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're trying to grow the business and still trying to be aggressive and, you know, be the 800-pound gorilla and really be on every computer for any business in the world. You know, we want to be the go-to software, but we're doing it in such a interesting way, right? Like our go-to-market strategy, it's so different and phenomenal. And so we're going to continue that. We're not changing from that side. From the product perspective, one of the biggest things is just putting more effort into, you know, continuing to improve the product. You know, what I mentioned earlier of like really understanding that downstream business use case. How do we make it easier? How do we make sure that it's reliable? How do we make sure that it's consistent and making sure that the experience is world class? And so that's kind of the new layer that we're trying to add as a new muscle in everything that we're doing. You know, we're still going to build new tools, build new products, really understand all the markets there, and that's actually easy for us. You know what I mentioned? It's like there's no new innovation. Like, well, that innovation part, it's old hat. We know how to look at other software. We know how to build it. We know how to stack up the teams. We know how to get going there. But now it's, you know, where we can improve is that usability and reliability. So that's really the biggest thing for us in 2025.
Definitely. That's awesome. I see a lot of the things happening in the high level space right now are on the cutting edge of where humanity is ultimately going, which is around the topic of AI and things of that nature. So, what are some of the features and stuff that you've found to be the most helpful to the demographics that you serve, whether it's your specific customer, the agencies, or their downstream clients? And what ones would you be excited to see come to market?
Yeah, I mean, right now, well, you know, we've been in AI since the beginning. You know, first it was leveraging, you know, just automatic responses based on, you know, trigger words, which would be, you know, positive intent, negative intent. So based on certain algorithms, if someone said and it responded with anything positive, you can actually trigger off of that and leverage any automation that you want. Same thing on a negative side. But it's since then expanded. And so, you know, our journey was first, how do we just incorporate any of the generative AI aspects within the business or within the software? So, you know, in the funnel builder, when you need copywriting, if you need graphics, social media posting, things like that. So, anything that we can help curate and create content for you is where we started with AI. Then the bigger one that we released actually last year was doing more conversational AI, right? Like when someone comes in, can we actually help create bots and actually create the conversation to keep going? And then we got into voice AI, which is kind of a new layer for us, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think there's, you know, when you talk about being cutting edge, I think that gives a lot of businesses to the ability to no longer have to hire resources or go to answering services. Now you have an AI bot that can really take over that. And then I think, you know, where we're going now is how do we take all the different aspects of the software and, leverage AI to not only help set up the software, manipulate the software, down to, hey, I'm looking for people who are wearing black polo t-shirts with red cuffs, right? Like, and you just type that in and it automatically curates the software to help not only filter those things, and then it's now send a message to them that every Thursday we're all going to meet on a webinar to talk about the new versions of clothing, right? Like, just being able to talk to the software and it just gives you the outcome that you want versus you consistently having to build it. I think that's going to be one of the bigger innovations that I think it's one of those weird innovations that people won't realize what's happening, but it's going to be monumental in how we're shifting the use case of software in business.
Definitely. I think there's a lot to be said around the automations we're going to see in the future, especially implemented in businesses and how it's going to affect our overall economy and things of that nature. So I guess one of the questions that I have is to you, a leader in the AI space. What kind of jobs do you think that you'll start to see that maybe don't exist at the moment or are beginning to start come to the market that will replace ones that are being replaced by AI?
I think uh, one of the biggest things that I would say for anyone, who's a bit younger, thinking about if you should go to school or be an entrepreneur and all that, what I always tell people is like, look, you can always be an entrepreneur. You don't necessarily need school unless if you want the opportunity to build relationships and if you can afford it. And if you can't afford it, that's okay. You could still curate it, but it's when you put everyone in a bubble and you kind of force someone to do it, you kind of network a little bit easier. But there's a cost to pay for that. But that aside, if you just are looking for new jobs and things like that, getting really strong at clearly communicating through written form, I think that's going to be the new version of software engineering. Basically like prompt writing and things like that. And I do think that people struggle on that front because you have to basically clearly articulate in written form every baby step that you want the system to do. So I think that's one opportunity. I also think, from an engineering perspective of, on the AI side, it's creating more of the design framework. It's one thing to tell the AI, think of Chat or OpenAI or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. You can tell it to do things, but when you want to create kind of this masterful system, think of Zapier as an example, right? Like that's always been the hub, and you have to kind of tell it to go do these things in different software applications. And so, someone who can kind of take a step back and map that out and design it as a blueprint in written form, pair that with someone who knows how to articulate that clearly, now you're able to leverage AI very amazingly well. And I think those are kind of the two biggest things that I would see in the AI front.
I love that. I think that to state a quick summary of what you said in a little bit of a different way, anybody who's in the younger generation and is still in school, really pay attention in English class or whatever language classes you're taking, because it's going to be pretty relevant to be able to properly articulate things and make sure that you're getting the results you're looking to get out of by saying what you say.
Yep.
One other thing that you touched on here a lot that I love that you touched on is the idea of relationships and building those relationships. What would you kind of say are some of your like superpowers in the realm of going and being able to build genuine relationships with people?
I mean, for me, it's always been, whatever that you do in whatever circle that you're in, are you willing to take them along for the same journey? And, how do you give so much value to somebody that they feel like, from the reciprocal perspective, they feel like they're indebted to you? And so that's honestly how I've, built on my personal relationships as well as the business relationships. And, very similar to how we built the company, right? Like we want to make sure that I can give you so much value that when I do have a simple ask, you feel like I'm going to over deliver to give you back because I don't know how to repay you in any other way. And so that's the way that I've genuinely looked at relationships. It's not transactional. It is something, if it's worthwhile, then you got to keep it going.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, so we talked about your goals a minute ago for 2025 and things of that nature. What would you say is kind of like your big domino, the thing that's if you knock that one thing over, the rest will come into play. What's that one thing that's standing in front of you to reach that goal?
I think for us, it's Yeah, it's a good question. I think, one of the biggest things that we're really trying to figure out is the international space. And,
Interesting.
how do we know we have a great product and we know we have international users who are using it, but what I wanna do is how do we become a well-known name without traditional marketing. Like, if you think of the Salesforce of the world or HubSpots, they're having to buy ads, they're at different events and things like that. And for us, it's how do we become such a well-known name in a market where we're the go-to product that everybody is talking about? It's before anyone gets started in a business, it's, oh yeah, you should go check out High Level, right? And that's what I'm really trying to figure out. It's what we did here in North America and how we've grown the business so far and had great exposure there. But in other markets, I also want to be that there. So that's one of the biggest dominoes that I think that if I can solve for that, then we'll be in really good shape.
That's really cool. I love that. A lot of times I speak with entrepreneurs on here and they all talk about like their goal is to, drive up ad spend and all that stuff. And you're just like, no, how do we build relationships with people to break into new markets? And that is
Yeah.
such a unique spin on it. And it comes from a more genuine place too, in my opinion, because it's like, I'm not just gonna throw money at the problem. It's like I want people to actually vibe with this and be a part of the mission to push it forward. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and
Um,
it could come back to what you said earlier, right? Like, there's short-term thinking, which you can always throw money at, and then there's long-term thinking where it's if I bring you so much value, it's going to amplify 10 times larger. And so that's what we're paying attention to. And what, for us, that's what comes easy for us.
Definitely. That's awesome. So what would you say is like your one defining like superpower or characteristic that's kind of helped you throughout all of your journey as an entrepreneur and just in life in general? Like what is that one key thing that you can always rely on as your superpower?
I mean, I'd probably say, just going with your gut. But, for me, it's when a problem comes up, how do you pull yourself up and look at it from a 10,000-foot view? You know, kind of like a chess move. It's what are the 5 other points that you gotta look at, right? Like, well, if you go down this path, here's what would happen here. If you go down another path, there's consequences on everywhere that you go. And then from there, it's okay. Well, this is the best option. I'm not gonna second guess it. Let's just go with my gut and run with it there. So I'd probably say it's kind of playing the, mental Rubik's cube all the time or 3D chess, whatever you're gonna think. It's just constantly trying to figure out what is the next move and can I see around the corner there.
Yeah, a lot of strategy in there and everything of that nature. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Um okay, so then, as we're coming to the end of this podcast here, I've got a couple more questions and then we'll do the wrap up. But we talked beforehand about one of the things that I hear from everyone is the question, is it high level or is it go high level, and what's the story there?
Yeah, so, it's whatever you want it to be, that's what we always say because you can white label the software. But, when we started the company, I'm sorry, it was High Level LLC. That's how we started it, but when we were looking to buy the name, highlevel.com was already owned by somebody else, a domain squatter, and they wanted crazy amounts of money. And and at that time, we're just like, we'd rather use the money towards engineering or building the product or helping our customers, not in the vanity of the name. So then we were just like, let's go to GoDaddy and just find a different version of it. And that's how we landed on GoHighLevel.com. Funny story though, now that we've gotten bigger, I have approached or attempted to approach the people who own highlevel.com, and they're not even taking our calls. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's we're good with whatever you want to call it, whether it's go high level or high level, we'll make it work.
I love how you answered that question initially, where you were basically like, it's white labeled, so you want it whatever you want it to be. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's your brand that really matters, not ours.
Awesome. So then another one, and I don't know if there's any special story behind this or not, but I'm curious. Behind the logo, like, is there any story behind how you guys came up with this robot looking um icon for high level?
No, so, one of our team members, Chase, I mean, he's definitely the brainchild behind it. Um, he at the time was like, "Look, every, software company has some sort of mascot," and, he came up with, like, 5 or 6 different versions, and then internally, we ended up picking, the space theme and stuff 'cause, we've always kinda looked at it saying, "Hey, we're going at a higher level." what's actually higher than space, right? So that's kind of where the moniker came from of that. And then from there, we actually went to the community at that time saying, "Hey, this is going to be our new mascot. Would you like to help us name it?" And we did a global survey, and yeah, we landed with Hiley. And so Hiley's our mascot, and we just played with it, and incorporated into our branding and who we are, and had a lot of fun with it.
Heck yeah, that's really cool. I love that, being able to let the community be a part of the growth and help determine those things, and then also team members inside. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so the final question that I've asked on and off throughout the time of running this podcast is we live in a really unique period of time where we have the ability to record things via video and other stuff of that nature, and there will be a day in the future where we're no longer here. So we have the opportunity to document words of wisdom to generations that are in the future. So, what would be the one piece of advice that you would kind of leave to humanity as a summation of everything that you've learned to date that you found valuable for operating in the world that we live in?
I'd probably say, whatever you do, just make sure that it is for the benefit of the greater good and not for selfish reasons. And I think that's where a lot of people start making the wrong decisions when it's just about, me, and not, you know, this is the right decision that's going to make everyone win in a successful way. And so, when I think about, what would happen for, once I die, what do I want to be known for and stuff like that? It's, hey, that person always looked out for others, or, try to make an impact with all the decisions that he made for the greater good.
I love that. That's really great. Um, so, where is it that people can reach out and find you if they want to have a conversation or get involved in high level or any opportunity that you have? Where would you like those people to find you?
Yeah, you can always check out our website, gohighlevel.com. And then, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm accessible. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, really all the social channels. You can find me, Robin Alex. And you can also send me an email, Robin, ROBIN, at gohighlevel.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robin. This has been an amazing episode, and I'm excited to see what High Level comes out with next.
All right. Thank you so much, John.